it that the net result will be for our community? Is it that they are Islamically? Is it that they are students who have an Islamic ethical and theological consciousness? Is it that they're thinking like a Muslim, feelings, they're thinking like a Muslim, spiritual, but they're in that field. I mean, I'm just wondering,
Yeah,
what is
three
it?
things. Three
Yeah,
things. Number one is for themselves, they
yeah,
will benefit that they will become enriched as a Muslim,
yes,
right?
yes,
So their minds will open. They'll be able to have conversations with people like us who can
yeah,
help them and nurture them and say, okay, well, this particular, because they're going to have dilemmas, whatever field they go into, ethical, moral dilemmas. So we can say, okay, well, let's think about this deeply. Number one. Number two is they'll become a practical example. They'll excel in those fields. So because for us, ilm is not just ilmi, it's not just intellectual, it's also
yeah,
amali. So
yeah,
then they'll be in those fields and they will infuse it with a Islamic, theological, theocentric, whatever you want to call it, tawheedic
yeah,
paradigm in the
yeah,
field
yeah,
that they go into, whichever field they go into, right? It doesn't matter. We're just happy for them. The third benefit is that they become role models. We know in our Sharia that role modeling is very, very important. I mean, just think about the fiqh around the Imam, right? A'lam, afqah, right? If you
mm,
think about other ulama, they also talk about why, Imam should be good looking and all of these sterling qualities. Why? Because they are like role models. They're a sort of people that people can aspire to. So when we have working role models as a community to say, this person, she made it, he made it, why can't you do it now? So they
right,
create a pathway when they get into those fields. The fourth thing, I think, and there was three, but the fourth thing is that as a community, we can uplift ourselves, and we can become part of the conversation in all of these fields, whichever field or whatever subject it is in, of course. Now, of
brilliant.
course, I'm also aware that there is, I mean, as much as we're talking about ideal types and ambition, we have to also be aware that there are forms of structural racism and discrimination.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, there are
We have
systemic.
to be aware of that,
Yeah,
the fact that you're a Muslim, visible Muslim perhaps,
exactly,
or practicing
exactly.
Muslim, that might create barriers for you. But that doesn't mean that we don't strive,
No,
right?
no.
It's not the idea that we don't strive, but those things we can leave with God, we can leave with Allah, but our job is to try and, like to do the best that we can do.
No, I can see how this view. I'm just trying to mentally map it with what I mentioned about my four aims of Islamic education. One of them was the idea of empowerment, right, to prepare Muslims, to be professionals, scientists, engineers, whatever it is, not just scientists, engineers. What I mean is any spectrum where the ummah can benefit, politically, intellectually, scientifically, technologically, and so on. Right. So I've got one exciting area where Islamic education can be revitalized is empowerment of the believer to get those skills, knowledge, expertise, and that requires funding, right? It requires a funding stream. Okay, brilliant. I like that. I would agree with that. Let's just take a madrasa student as an example. So she or
Mhm.
he has finished their alimiyah, and that funding tract is now open for them to be empowered to become a professional, or an academic, whatever it might be. Okay, khair, that's good. But what about the prior bit, like the alimiyah bit?
Yeah,
What do we? Is there something we can speak to that
yeah,
where,
of course, of
uh,
course.
you know, what might be the opportunities here? What might we need to tweak, or
Yeah.
what's the exciting bit, innovative bit here that we can do?
Brilliant. So first thing, of course, when we talk about madaris or darul ulooms, we
Yeah,
have to first of all acknowledge that they're not homogeneous. They all have,
right, right.
even within one tradition, whether that's the Barelvi tradition, the Deobandi tradition,
Yes, yes,
they within themselves, those of us who are inside those circles know that within themselves they have differences or different values or different points that they put emphasis on. So the ones that are interested, we can work with them, and they are always open. Like the ones that I've met and the ones that I work with, my experience has been overwhelmingly positive. It's a question of resources. It's a question of people like us coming in, giving our time, giving a bit of sacrifice, and trying to help them. What we can do is, first of all, is reflect upon the pedagogy. So the
right.
texts themselves, some of them, not all of them, um, are masterpieces. I mean, the Hidayah, as
Mm,
you know, is a masterpiece. Um, Imam Nasafi's text is a masterpiece. Jalalain, if it's taught well, is a masterpiece. I mean, these books have stood the test of time. So it's not a question that the text or somehow need to be changed. I mean, you can change texts, that's not an issue. The main thing is the students understand what's going on, what was the purpose of that text being written,
Right.
developing a malaka to read the text well, so between the lines. This is something that our friends always talk about, being able to read what is the author trying to get at, and then trying to develop within the students the ability to think about, well, what does it mean for us today? What are these conversations that the fuqaha were having in the 10th century or 11th century? What does it mean for us today? Rather than regurgitating what they've said, because that's not the point. The point is, okay, how does it work for us today? How does it work in a society where we've had huge medical advancements in technology, in many fields, right? For ill or for ill or for ill or for good. That requires rijal, Dr. Safaruk. That requires
Mm.
we could say nisa as well, to be fair. That requires investment, I think, in bringing in people who have the time and the energy to do that. It's not easy. I mean, to dedicate yourself to a certain field requires a huge amount of time. You can't do it part time, you have to do it full time. So that requires people like us and financiers and business people and people who really care about all of this to say, okay, well, we'll fund or we'll support people to come in and teach these subjects. And that is happening. There are positive signs. So first of all, they need to have the openness. The seminary or the madrasa needs to have the openness and see that this is actually valuable for their students. The second thing is from the community, we need to support people to go into these places to be able to teach our students, our teachers, so that they can bring these texts to life. And also get students to think deeply about what it means for the world today. The challenge you have is sometimes in these places, and it's not their fault,
Yeah.
they live in a little bit of a bubble. So they're not always aware of, okay, what's really going on out there, and how does what we've just read, this mutton that we've read, or this text that
Mm.
we just read, what does it mean for the average person living in the world today? So we need people who live in both worlds to come into the seminaries, people who inhabit both worlds, who are grappling with the challenges of modernity, secular modernity, and bringing that into students. What I've been trying to do with, for example, just to give an example, my friend Mufti
Yeah.
Muaz, who you know very well, Mufti Muaz Chatti,
Yes.
he's been, mashallah, he's a Darul teacher, he's a seminary teacher, he's a Mufti. And he realizes, I hope that he won't take this as an insult. I'm trying to, acknowledge good work. He has an example of someone I've seen. He realizes that there's a need in the Muslim community in the ulama circle, and he can't fulfill all those needs himself. So what does he do? He gets people who are experts on subcontinental history,